were related to Spanish history. And so probably the most meaningful part of it was being able to apply that directly. So we would learn, about some ancient Roman civilization that first settled in Spain, and then we would go there and we would see the ruins. And in the United States, you can go to Washington, D.C., and you can go to these places and see all of these things that are maybe a couple hundred years old, but in Europe you can go to places that are, thousands of years old, which is just completely mind-blowing to learn about this history and then to go out and see it.
So I was supposed to be down there for a 10-week program. And on the 6th week, I was on a city bus, and I was supposed to be going just to another city to kind of sightsee. And I was actually in a bus accident down there. And so I was injured pretty badly, but a lot of people there, I realized how nice and accepting this culture was, because so many of them were like, I'm so sorry this happened to you. Don't hate Ecuador now. And I was like, if I was in the U.S. and were to get in a bus accident, I wouldn't just move out of the U.S., And so it really just changed my perspective on the people and the issues that they deal with, because apparently bus accidents and public transportation issues are really common there, and I had no idea.
Well, there was one that I was going to do where I would be working at the university in Bucharest, and I was just going to be advising students, but I kind of felt like this internship, working with kids with HIV, especially from the situation that I came from, I just felt like that would mean a lot more, and it was definitely worth it. It was probably a little bit harder too. I was on my own in this internship. I had a supervisor come over from the United States for 10 days, and then after that, for the rest of the trip, I was just on my own. And so that was, it was more rewarding, but it was more difficult too. So
I tell people that I learned a lot about what I don't know more than, using what I did know. So I'm really glad I did it in the middle of my education rather than at the very end like some people do, because I definitely have come back knowing what some of my own problems are that I need to work at in my classes and study harder at, because the internship experience was very different and very frustrating and great and perfect, but not the same as teaching in America.
The coolest thing for me was my heritage is from Finland. I still have ancestors living there, and I pretty much decided on a whim one day. We have if you study abroad in Austria, you get every Catholic holiday off, and we got 3 weeks off for Easter. So over the Easter break, my friend and I decided we wanted to go to Italy for the second half of it, but then I decided I woke up and said, I think I'm going to go to Finland for 9 days. And so I just bought a flight and I went there by myself. And it was just, it sounds so lame when I talk about it, but I really did feel like I fit in, and people would come up to me and start talking to me in Finnish because maybe I look Finnish or look like I belong there or something. But I just really felt at home there. And I mean, I don't speak I speak a few words of Finnish, but just the basic hello stuff.
I don't know if it's really impacted my perspective. It was a lot of what I expected, but it was definitely a new experience. Because I speak Korean and English, I acted almost as a translator while there.
Before you have a broad experience or cultural experience, you might view like, oh, this is weird, or this person is strange for doing this thing or wearing this certain type of clothes or acting this way, when in reality it's just different. You know what I mean?
I would say it's even changed some of my political views and social views, especially, I guess to give an example, with immigration and language. I'm way more open to it after being in Europe for that long,
and experiencing it ourselves.
Yeah, and seeing signs that have 4 different languages on it. I think it's silly when people get mad when it's in Spanish. I don't know.
There was one time I was in the car with my boss who was taking me to work through my visa stuff, my work visa stuff. And so it was him, and then the superintendent of the school was also in the car. And the car stopped working, which had happened the time before that I had been in the car. It just kind of glitched out, I guess. And my supervisor, his name was Kaiser, he got out of the car and was fixing things. And I said, man, I'm sorry, it must be bad luck. This happened last time I was in the car. And the 2 men were like so taken aback by me saying that. and they were like, well, no, it's fine. And one of them said, no, Maggie, delays are fine. It's fine. Just this idea that who cares? And one of them said, obviously, if there's a delay, there's something that we're supposed to be avoiding on our way to the passport office. And the other one was like, yeah, of course, that's obviously what's going on. And I was so like, okay, I guess, sure.
That you can live your life one way and halfway across the world, they are just as happy and they're living a completely different way, or they believe completely different things than you.
I don't know, I think the way that I relate to people has changed a little bit since I've been back. I tend to see more of the commonalities that we share as opposed to the differences.
So one of the things, I told you how we did a comparison between urban and rural healthcare. And one of the things, so first off, I shadowed a hematologist for a while. A lot of his patients had leukemia or cancer, and they don't have a lot of money there. They had one computer for like 9 floors, literally 9 floors. And so what he was doing is he'd take blood samples and he'd put them on little slides, roll them up in toilet paper and put them in his pocket. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the most intelligent man I've ever met, and yet he doesn't have the technology to kind of back up his intelligence, and so he's struggling every day to make his data accurate, and I was just mind blown there because we have so much technology here.
It was so different than what I thought. I mean, I knew that the buildings would be old and the architecture would be, just really historical, but I didn't know how awestruck I would be standing in front of it.
We traveled a lot of places. We went to the Great Wall of China. I was so impressed by how much labor was put into building that. And we climbed the Mount Taishan. And that was huge because on the mountains there was Chinese words written on there and engraved in, and I was like, that's pretty incredible. Who would take so much time to do that?
I remember this day when for the first time I went to a slot canyon. I went hiking through a slot canyon, and it was mind-blowing, absolutely amazing. Yeah.
You can feel that energy, you can feel that energy of the past. And just imagining how people lived 3,000 years ago and how it was, that was really cool for me academically.
I think one of the coolest experiences was taking art and architecture in Prague. We walked around the city and we learned all about, the different styles of architecture, the art that, dated back all the way to the 9th century, 10th century.
The last weekend that we were there, as a group from the U, we decided that we were going to stay out all night with our professor, and then watch the sunrise in the cathedral square, and whoever could make it through the night into the sunrise would get breakfast. So our professor had told us that before, only a few stragglers had remained and there wasn't a whole lot, but as a collective group, most of us actually made it the entire night, experiencing the nightlife in Oviedo with our professor, nonetheless, who was one of the, greatest impactors of the trip. And then we all got to soak in our last day in Oviedo, sitting in the cathedral square watching the sunrise over the cobblestone streets and the buildings. And I think that was probably the coolest experience that happened while I was there.
So I went to France before this, and in France, I wouldn't say that they hate Americans, but there are definitely some that do not really care for American tourists. And I kind of expected the same thing in Romania. So when I get there and I'm introduced to this, this group of people that I work with at ADV, my colleagues, and they're some of the sweetest people. Romanians are known for being very hospitable. So the 4th of July comes around, and this is the first time I haven't been in the United States for the 4th of July. And I wasn't expecting anything. I was just, I didn't even think anyone was going to know or remember anything. And all day, people kept coming up to me and saying, "Happy birthday of your country," and all these things, and it was just hilarious. But they even made me a pillow with the American flag, stripes on one side, stars on the other, and then a shirt, and it had Uncle Sam on it, and it said Happy 4th of July. And I was just I could not believe it. But it was, for them to even care enough to do that, for them, you know, they barely knew me at that point. I'd only been there, you know, a couple weeks maybe. But for them to do that just shows, you know, you can go to these different places and there are people who will care about you. There are people who will, I don't know, that are hospitable, that want to give foreigners a good experience. And that's exactly why they did it. They want me to have a good experience in Romania.